In the middle of Mishnah Avos. That's page 170. Where are you looking?
I'm looking for 170. I don't know what.
Wait, do you have more?
And Kedushin. Okay. What's this?
What are we doing?
Until we get started, it takes.
Alright.
I got a bigger print here. It's running now already. We're running.
You have it there?
2.5 minutes went by.
Hello.
Waste.
Philo says, Alvin Atzibur, do not separate yourself from the Jewish community. Tamim b'atzlecho, yom utzcho, and don't believe in yourself until the day of your death. And don't judge your fellow Jew until you come to his place. And don't say a thing that's impossible to understand. That you hope that eventually it will be understood. And don't say when I will have time, I will be free from my activities, I will learn Shem Eloi Tiponim. Maybe you'll never have freedom from them. Now let's look at Bartanura. It says, Al Tiprosh min HaTzibur, do not go and separate from the Jewish community. Al Hishtatef B'Torasam, you should join yourself together with their troubles. HaTzibur, anybody that separates himself from the Jewish community, Einu Rav and Nechemes HaTzibur, will not see the comforting of the Tzibur. In other words, he won't see the good times. He'll come and more in Tanis Yud Aleph Aleph. Al Tomar v'atzmecha, don't say about yourself. Al Tamon v'atzmecha, don't believe in yourself until your day of your death. In other words, don't assume that you're such a big time tzaddik that you don't have to go and prepare or work hard to do the Ratzon Hashem. Shari Yochanan Kohen Gadol, we give the example of Yochanan Kohen, like more in Brachos Chavtes Amud Aleph. He was the Kohen Gadol for 80 years, and each time he'd go into Kodesh Kedoshim and come out alive, which means that God considered him a complete righteous type. And at the end of his years, he became a free thinker, like a reform, a conservative Jew. So you can never depend that just because most of your life you have been a religious type that necessarily you will continue that. Don't judge your fellow Jew until you come to his place. If you see your fellow Jew, he comes to some kind of a test, and he flunks it. You hear this? He stumbles, he flunks it, he made it wrong, he didn't do it right. He didn't pass the test. Don't judge him unfavorably. You hear this? Until you come to the same kind of a test that he came through, with the same conditions, and somehow you were able to save yourself from flunking that examination.
That means if you pass the test, you can condemn the one that flunked it?
Not that you condemn him, but you are in no position to make a judgment in the area, as long as you don't know all
haven't
the
against
things,
it.
what he has been
Sure.
gone through.
I can understand that, but it says, if a person's nice enough not to judge his fellow Jew when he sees him stumble, I would think God would bless that person, that he wouldn't have to undergo the same test that he saw someone perhaps flunk, and he keeps his mouth shut about it. He feels sorry about it, so to speak.
Could be, or
in other words,
be that
why should God punish the person?
God is not punishing anybody.
Why should but it says here, until you experience the same thing and pass it. It intimates that if one sees another one go through a difficulty,
Yes.
that he too will be subjected to the same thing.
Or
Pass it.
No, it could say,
It's possible that he may or may not go through the same test. But in no any circumstances, he is not in a position to make any analysis of the other person's failure or not, unless he has that
Experienced it.
That would do it.
Now, if he did, what is
Only
his
under the
position? If he, wait, I'm trying to ask, if you, an individual, experiences beforehand and sees his fellow man go through the same sort of difficulty,
No, that's not enough.
is he supposed to give words of encouragement?
No, that's
What
not
is he
enough.
supposed to do?
No, you interpret it.
I'm not saying I
misinterpreting what-
understand what it's saying.
Well, it's saying-
But it's saying that it's improper for anyone to judge his fellow man when he sees he's put into a difficulty and he doesn't extricate himself from the difficulty He has some, in other words, he fails a test. So the question...
When is it improper?
When is what improper?
To make even a suggestion
First,
that you can...
first of
make it-
all, he should always judge his fellow man in a proper,
no, but what
in a
is the
good
Tana
way.
of this Mishnah saying?
He's
According
saying
to
that
Bartanura.
he's saying that it's improper to judge your fellow man unless you will then experience the same thing
No,
in the
unless
future.
conditions-
Not that you did
No,
it.
conditions are the exact same as yours, as his.
Yeah.
And unless,
Now, why should it say, and you passed it previously? What is the reason for this? You understand my
It's saying
question?
that you're in no position to make a judgment. All right, what's the shaila?
What's the question?
Okay, first, you gotta hold your mouth still until you go through the same thing. That's
Yes.
a help, so that you don't overthink because it may never come. It'll just help you not to
You're in no
get...
position to make judgments. You're right in the first place.
Okay.
But the only time that you can even make a judgment, or in a position to make a judgment, if you had the same situation that this person went through, the identical same thing.
I know it says
Same-
if, that helps
if you, unless you have the identical same thing, even if you see that he doesn't pass the test, you may not make a judgment as to whether or not that he is what, Rabbi? You may not
I
make a
agree.
judgment.
I realize that, but why does the words end with the idea that you experienced that test and you passed it? What's it trying to say that you
make
passed?
it in your own mind? In your own mind, it doesn't say that you should go and voice any opinions.
No.
And all it's trying to
Doesn't
say
say
is
that.
that you're not even to make a judgment in your own mind in relation to this person, even if he flunks the test.
You can't say, oh, it's
But you
alright.
are allowed, if you experience the very same thing and pass it, because it ends with the idea that you passed it.
Yes.
Why does it say that? It would be proper to
Let's look at
say,
the other
unless
Meforshim.
you
Let's look
experience.
at the other Meforshim. Let's not make a...
I'm excited about because it says that throws a whole new light on it.
We'll tell him in
Okay, all right. Okay.
Perhaps the Rabbi Nation will say point.
And we have to wait.
Bartanura just said that if you're not supposed to judge your fellow Jew
Unless you're in his
unfavorably,
circle.
even if he goes and stumbles and and cannot go and pass the test, until you get to the same position, and then you can pass the test. You will not stumble. So now I'll read you what the Rabbi about the Shon
Yeah.
says on the same point.
Yeah.
Gam said this is also who mina inyan amin ba'atzmo. It also is referring to a man is not to believe in himself, because one of the things that a person, when he has assurance and feels in himself that he is so good and so wonderful, is that he is unfortunately prone to go and judge others unfavorably. Say, look, I'm such a good person, these people are not good. Because in his mind, he has the impression he's so good, so therefore he is, in other words, in a position to now make a judgment in relation to others. So this is talking about, that's why these two things are together. It says, Gam Zed, this is also Rumino Inyan from the subject matter, a person shouldn't believe in himself. Not to depend on his thinking, Yosemidai, more than necessary. And if he sees his fellow Jew, when he sees his fellow Jew, in a very high standard, and he doesn't go and conduct himself in a proper way, Al Yomar, he shouldn't say, if I had filled his place, I would not have done this bad thing. Of all the things he's doing, to do for bad. Lafi because you do not know. Oh, if you could be just like him. What? A judgment. He also, this particular station might even pervert you. It might put you off. If you come to his place, also to his high station, and you are capable of having control of yourself to the point that you did not make the mistake he made. At that point, then you have permission to think, make a judgment about his standards. It is ruled out completely that you should make any judgment until you go through the whole thing, and you have been successful. Or he has. You don't have to make a judgment.
Not to.
Then you're permitted at that point to only at that point.
But it says think about it without coming to a conclusion.
It doesn't even talk about coming to a conclusion. It just says you're permitted to think about it.
See, it doesn't say.
You can think about it. You cannot be so sure of your piety as to be in a situation where you think that you can go and be very, very, I would never do a thing like this. People have that kind of sanctimonious, whatever you want to call it. People have that tendency. They don't even have to have too much of a reason. There was once a story told about Chafetz Chaim. He saw one Jew. He was with a big bulk. He had such chutzpah, and he had such a high opinion of himself. And he came to him, he talked to him privately. He says, I don't understand what your Baal Gaivnik is about. He says, learn Torah, you're not much of a learner. You haven't got it. Midas Davis, you don't have. What have you to be so proud about? You understand?
So what did he say?
You see, a human being has...
It's not important what he said. He was already
a human being,
told the proper
a
thing.
Human being has a tendency to magnify his qualities and to assume without the slightest pretext that he possesses superior qualities to other people.
But I do.
All goyim, I agree with you. You're in the running.
Everybody's about God. Well, all right, now let's get back to the Bartanur now. I just wanted you to give you a rishon how he approaches the
You're
same
superior to all
problem.
goyim.
I appreciated that you found
It
a little
says
bit.
the standard of religiosity as your fellow man has.
If you get to, actually, Rashi brings a case there where Shlomo HaMelech was delaying in bringing the korban, and so therefore was critical of him. How come he didn't bring the korban at the proper time? He was fooled by Bas Paro to come 4 hours late. She understand? And so he says, if I was the king, I would have done it, which is improper. You're not supposed to make a judgment about somebody if he makes a mistake, even if he makes a grievous mistake, because God knows if you were placed in the same position, you might even do a worse job than he did. Everybody makes the assumption, oh, he did such a horrible job. And he never enters his mind even 1 minute to figure out if he was in that position, maybe he might not even do much of a job.
The angels couldn't make a good job of it. How was man supposed to do it?
The angels said, yes, that's what they said to God. He says, listen, God, the reason it's being messed up on earth is because you have human beings there. Now, if you let us go on earth, we would do it.
Yeah, they messed it up.
They got
Be superior to angels.
Well, thanks again. We are.
choice.
What I'm saying is,
We are superior to angels.
if we-
No, because remember the Medrash we learned? The Medrash we learned that Olam Rishon was smarter than the angels?
Yeah, he could name the animals.
Everything.
We can learn
Yeah,
now.
so God said, I am creating a creature that's smarter than you. The Malchei Asheris. He's smarter than you. When you have wisdom, you have power. You have tremendous power. Now this power must be, of course, tempered with Torah knowledge. Because, unfortunately, when a person has just unbridled power, he can go to Tarbis Roch and do a lot of bad things. Therefore, and especially since God has blessed us Jews with tremendous potential in this area, so we have a more urgent necessity for God's Torah than perhaps other nations of the world. Because we, by virtue of the fact that we are a small nation and we have to live by our wits, so we're very, very careful to try to survive under all circumstances. And therefore, and that being the situation, we have a corresponding responsibility to curb our unbridled power and to channel it in the proper direction. The power that God has given to the descendants, because we are descendants of great tzaddikim, God has given us a wonderful gift, His Torah. And the power of the Torah is powerful. It can do things you wouldn't believe. And therefore, we are responsible to utilize this power in the proper direction. All right, let's go further in the Bartanura. The Bartanura says like this. Don't say a thing that it's possible to hear, that in the end it will be heard. What does this mean? No, I'm going back to
Oh,
the
you know, the same thing that's here in the Barcelona.
I am not reading right there.
Yeah.
We are. Don't say a thing that's impossible to understand at this time, that in the hopes that eventually it'll be understood. In other words, don't talk in such a way that you make people not understand what you're talking about. Let me read the proportion. See what he says. All right, what does he say? Klomer, now let's just say, your word should not be doubtful. When you speak, it's got to be clear and to the point. Don't say words that can be interpreted in a variety of meanings. You have it? Al Tomar Dav Sheyef Shel Yishmoa L'Tovi Shemeam in the Rabbeinu Avadim Bat Tenura. Inner column. It says, Klomer, that's to say, Lo Yud Vorachem Sufokim. Your word should not be doubtful words, so that so it would be impossible to understand in the beginning, in the first concentration upon it. And to some extent that you should depend, that the one that listens to it, if he really concentrates and thinks about it a long time, eventually understand what you say. But
why is it sometimes, okay, I've heard stories like when people go to the Baba Rebbe or something, he always speaks in a hint, or he gives them a little, and then they have to ask somebody else what it means.
Well, obviously you shouldn't do it.
I personally had
You shouldn't do it.
audiences with him,
Yeah.
and he was very explicit. I understood exactly
Fine, good.
what he was saying. Often that is the case.
Well,
And it's usually in the case of an individual who never is not experienced or with so the Talmidim are able to expound on what the words
well,
of the Rebbe
whatever
said,
it is not
that
a
he can
proper
understand
thing.
it better.
It is not a proper thing
Yeah.
to
Should you
leave.
talk to a person in their own language?
You should talk to them in a language they can understand.
Well,
Obviously.
that
It brings
is-
people
is emphasized
to
by
make a
someone else.
mistake in what you're talking about. Shem Yuto, perhaps they will make a mistake. But Yotzel Minus, and they might come, God forbid, to go and be free thinking and go away from Yiddishkeit because they misinterpreted what you said. And therefore you haven't, that's one thing. Because if you haven't, they haven't doubted what you mean, it could come to free thinking, go away from, through your agency, because you said in such an ambiguous way, or you didn't clarify it. Well, this is one explanation. It usually is talking about Torah. All right, let's go now.
About Torah, does that? I'm not trying to say. Shlomo Melech wrote the Mishnah, and you can't read just the Mishnah alone and to understand the true meanings.
It means that you're never permitted to learn Shlomo Melech just raw. You've got to learn it with Meforshim.
When
Shlomo Melech is teaching you a very great lesson. You are not permitted to learn the Torah without the Torah Shebe'al Peh. It is not permitted because if you do learn it there, you are subject to error.
so
You
in
will
other
not.
words, when you teach Torah, you can't just teach.
You got to teach Torah according to the Meforshim, according to the Torah Shebe'al Peh, according to the Gemara explanation. If you do not teach Torah according to the Gemara explanation, you're not teaching God's Torah. You're misinterpreting it. This is what the Goyim do all the time. Here's another explanation. Lo tegalot todecha, you should not reveal your secret. Afilu beinoch lebein atzmecha, even if you say it in private. If you have a secret, do not reveal it. There's nobody here that will hear you. The feature is so because the end will be that this secret will get out. Because there's we have a parable, like a bird of the heaven goes and brings out the noise. What happened? A little bird told me, yes. And the one of the versions here is that according that end will be heard. He learns it. What is that? The Divrei Torah there, talking about the words of Torah. Al Tomar Akshav, don't say in relation to the words of Torah that you have now a possibility of listening to it and learning it. Sheti Shoma also Libsof, that eventually you'll get around to learning it. Elahat Oznecha, but incline your ear right now when you have that opportunity. V'shoma Mayad, and listen immediately. In what? All right, now in relation to secret, you're talking about secret. Sometimes a person is not qualified to know certain secrets because it might lead them to
Like about-
misinterpreting what the intent or the thrust of Torah is. Many areas in where the Torah tells us certain things, Chazal tell us, don't tell this to the ordinary ignorant person because he would misinterpret what you're saying. You understand? There is a time and place for revealing secrets. God, in His understanding, reveals the secrets of His Torah to those that learn His Torah, to the degree that they're prepared or capable of understanding the secrets. As they delve further in God's Torah with the proper attitudes, Yireh Shamayim, Avos Hashem, God reveals more and more of the secrets of His Torah to these people. And this is a constant practice. It doesn't just happen in the time of the prophets, it's happening even in the present day. If you will sit and learn Torah, eventually God will give you more and more of the secrets of the Torah. And this is available to you as a help. But He will not give you these secrets until you're ready to take them and not to misinterpret them. All right, Moshe.
Okay. First of all, what do you mean by secret?
Secrets of the Torah are the things that God reveals to a person that learns Torah lishma, learns Torah for the proper motivation.
Certain things that aren't written.
Certain things that are not written but are understood from other things that you learn.
Things.
What?
Can you
To understand, that's
Can you give
okay.
us
Now, I once asked a question about if somebody gets a secret. Hey, until you've been learning a long time. So until this time, the person hasn't really been sure. God hasn't given it to him. He hasn't let him understand this secret. But then if he lets somebody else know that secret, maybe they're not ready for it because he's had to learn a long time in order to, maybe
That's
God
correct.
gave it to him after learning a long time. So then at that point he would be able to understand it. But then if he goes and tells somebody else,
Full heart.
so why then should a person say something, give somebody a secret?
Then you're not supposed to until they're ready
Well,
for it.
how do you?
When you come across someone
What?
That's the right.
equal
That if somebody gets a secret
knowledge or more,
and
right,
also
mature.
They should know it too.
You're only supposed to tell people secrets of the Torah when they're ready to accept it or ready to understand it.
How does the person know if somebody's ready to understand?
You have
it?
Takes years.
It takes time before a person gets to that capacity that he
You
can
have a
understand.
perception, you
I
don't
recall
know.
when I was learning in the yeshiva, and my rabbi, I hope he's still alive, but if he would be alive, he'd be Rabbi Shulman, was a tzaddik a yid, Yireh Shamayim, and he was teaching us Tanakh. He wanted to teach us about the Ma'aseh Merkava, about the intrinsic nature of God. And I told the rabbi, I said, in my humble opinion,
Yes, especially
we are not ready for it.
boys that are 20
No,
years
they
old.
weren't ready for it. I said,
I think
he wanted to do it.
Someone has to be
He
at
didn't
least
really-
40 years old.
But
Not
Well,
40 years of learning.
the person, okay, in that example, why would he relate these secrets of the Torah since he does not know whether the people he's relating it to should be listening to this or can
The
understand
truth,
it?
the
or
truth,
understand.
you will relate to secrets when you have enough knowledge that you can understand it, and you will then be given also the knowledge to know when to relate it.
Okay, that.
So it is, in other words, it is not given just haphazardly.
Why do you
It says here in Rashi, in the 6th chapter, and if you azik Torah lishma, Magalilo Rosi Torah, God reveals to him secrets of the Torah, min hashamayim, from heaven. You hear this? If a person azik the Torah lishma, God reveals him secrets of the Torah from heaven. So I'm not saying my own words. It's Rashi that's saying it. All right, yes. All right, now let's go back to the Bartanora. What's your shadow?
You told me I should ask it in class.
What's your shadow?
He wants to know why the rabbi wanted to reveal it.
if he got the information, when to reveal it?
Depends
Reveal it.
when a person is ready for it.
Yes, but if you said he gets it with the knowledge.
He will get what the
No,
knowledge.
not the information to know when to reveal the secret at the time he got the secret.
He will get
Why
enough
did
enough
he-
water.
He was in his 50s at least at the time.
What?
The rabbi, Rabbi Shulman,
Oh,
he
yeah.
was at least in his
Oh, yeah.
50s.
Yeah.
The knowledge when to give it is knowledge.
Well, perhaps he felt
What
some of
to-
us might be
was anxious.
ready for it. See, I was
I
10,
agree
12
with
years
you.
older than my fellow student. So in my case, I might have been ready for it.
Maybe.
The others may not have been.
And you don't want to hurt someone
But I
else.
told him that, in my humble opinion, he shouldn't teach it to anybody.
It's not only your humble
Too powerful.
opinion. I think I have learned that there's warnings that you do not give it to a person unless they're at
Or
least
they
40 years
follow.
old, mature,
Right, you could-
and with prior knowledge and learning that
Well,
they
you-
gotta be, at least you weren't,
No.
even then, the same thing.
Yeah.
Things
You
that-
can
Yeah.
go make mistakes, that are grievous mistakes.
Yes.
All right, let's go further. And then he says, shouldn't
Where?
say, when I have time, I will learn Asik Torah from my daily activities. I will engage in learning Torah, because perhaps that time never will come.
Oh,
All right, now let's learn Tiferes Yisrael on the bottom of the page. You have it, Yisrael, that would be Lamed Amud Avos before Lamed Beis.
One-third down in the first column.
Yeah, well, since Rabbi Gamliel said in the first mission base, how a person must conduct himself in relation to the Jewish community. Hiskir Nami Hocha, here we're also mentioning Divrei Zikeno Hillel. We're mentioning also the words of his ancestor Hillel, the Asik Amamona Mamadik with Tzibor, in relation to if a person is appointed to be a leader of a Jewish community, what he should do. So he says this, in relation to a person that's appointed to be ruling over the Jewish community, in other words, a leader of the Jewish community, there are 5 things that a person must be very careful about when he becomes a leader of the Jewish community. Perhaps you can take this for future reference. Yeah, we'll have it on it. 1, a person that is leading the Jewish community should not separate too much from the customs of the Jewish community. Incidentally, when we're talking about don't separate from the Jewish community, Rabbi Yonah tells us we're talking about a Jewish community that is engaged in righteous acts. We're not talking about, God
Mitzvahs
forbid, that they're going
Yeah.
away from Torah.
Yeah,
Matter of it's a mitzvah to go away from them. We're talking
Okay.
about the types that are trying to be religious.
Okay.
All right. So it says, first thing, you don't separate yourself from the customs of the community. Also, Lakarte, if you come to a town, also Limuse, you come to its various customs. In other words, you follow the customs of the city. You don't come over there and start changing everything just because you're the big time leader.
Yeah.
And when you come in and you want to set, Baruch Hashem, you can go and set a time for learning Torah, or Lispalo, or to pray, or the basic mitzvah, or to give advice in relation to doing any mitzvah concerning the Jewish community, or tzarkit tzibur, or any other necessities of the Jewish community. Lo yomar, you shouldn't think. Yachalitu ma sheyirtzu. Let them make up their minds whatever they want to do. Ani misratza b'kach, or b'kach. But I will make the final decision. I'll get in there and I'll go and figure out what has to be done because I'm the leader. Let them go and decide what they want to talk about, but the final decision will be mine, and I won't be involved in their deliberation.
Isn't that possible?
There's a lot of that going on. believe me.
You only have to you have to give advice that is good for the tzibor. To help them in every area, Vodas Hashem, to do the service of God.
You got to be close to them. You can't just.
That's right. Batar. What if he himself personally has no troubles? He, Baruch Hashem, is a gavir. He has his business is booming. He's a wealthy man. His business is booming, and there's no problem there. He has no problem with what little monetary things. They've got a $100,000 budget, and they're fetching this, and he's got millions and millions of dollars. By him, this is cleanest stuff.
So what does that guy do?
He must feel their pain, their chores, just as though he himself, God forbid, is also this
Same
pain.
predicament.
In other words, he must.
Isn't he supposed to handle
That's another question.
Yeah, number 4.
He should be small, and when he prays for himself, say for instance a person is in a position of authority, and he prays for himself, God help me do this, God help me do that. He should go join himself with the prayers together with the Jewish community. To include in himself everybody that needs the things that he needs. Because your prayers won't be heard except on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur unless you, when you make a tefillah for a sick Jew, you say,
Amongst
sick of Israel.
Yeah.
And then the 5th thing, Oh, I see.
I learned from that you really,
Yeah.
if you have an opportunity to say the Shemona Esrei with the minyan, you come in late, you should say it with the minyan. You shouldn't separate yourself from what the masses are doing in tefillah. And likewise, you shouldn't start the daven ahead of them when it comes to Shemona Esrei. Congratulations.
Yeah.
For him to find...
No, he just said, well, that's not
I read it the
You
right
read it
way.
the right way, but it's printed otherwise?
I wouldn't even notice it. I hear
Well,
to make sure, because if I
yeah.
was learning something,
Good.
I'd be totally confused.
Sure.
Incidentally, we'll learn, maybe not today, but next time, we'll learn that the person who makes a sefer, he should not put too many abbreviations in it. So that's just making it more difficult for people to learn.
Everybody does.
Why didn't they read that? Why didn't they?
Well, since they didn't do it, so
Just making something where somebody can
I did
understand.
it.
they perhaps had problems in
Printing
space and
space.
printing and the paper,
Who had money?
whatever it was. Or perhaps that's the way they found it.
My reasoning is that when a person is writing a manuscript, he knows what he's thinking of, and he jots down the abbreviations,
Yeah, it's like a
but
stenographer's
he
note.
should have corrected it later to spell it out
No,
completely.
you're making the assumption
That
this was
it's
written-
automatically
No,
accepted
you're
by
making
the...
an assumption it was written by a person the way he wanted, but it may very well
No,
be
no.
that this is the way a Chazal has
You didn't
written
get the
it down.
point I said.
I'm not going to go into...
No,
The
he
point I'm
meant
trying
the
to make
manuscript.
is that the person is writing so fast that he puts abbreviations, he knows what he's in his mind, but he keeps writing and writing, going on, and he never corrects the abbreviations to spell it out with the proper words. And therefore, when it's printed, they print it with the abbreviations, which is a mistake.
Yeah, that would be if he
See,
makes
sometimes
something on his
thoughts
own
come to you
mind.
so quickly that you gotta...
Also, if he's appointed a leader of the Jews or of Imoim Mamish, even though at this point, once you are made the leader of the Jewish people, you're not supposed to act like one of the boys. You've got to go be a little aloof from them in order to go and be able to act
And
as
what
a
way
leader.
aloof?
שלא ידמו שאתו כאחד
just sit in the
מהם
front row.
ושווה להם. He shouldn't say that you're just like one of them and nothing more.
Why?
Well, they've got to understand that you have a responsibility, that the buck stops here. You have to make the final decision in these areas, and therefore you must have a little aloofness in order to be able to operate.
Aloof what?
Not much too much. You're not supposed to go away completely from them, as though you were a lord, and it's not your honorable to mix among the Slavos. And this way you will lose their love, them that you're just lording it over in them. All right, now let's go to Lamed Gimel here. And Lamed Gimel is talking about you shouldn't believe on yourself. Don't believe on yourself until the day you're dead. Until the day you die, don't believe in yourself. In other words, don't believe in your righteousness. Don't believe, don't trust in the strength of your success.
Again, this is a problem for me.
Let's
It's
go-
that on the day of your
let's go.
death, you could
could
believe in
be
yourself.
happy, right?
Why couldn't it have said, never believe in yourself, even the day of your death? Then it means you never will. But when it says, don't believe until the day of your death, that's speaking like in a riddle, a parable. It intimates to me, all right, I will never do it, but if I know today I'm going to die, I can believe in myself.
But how do you know when you're going to die?
The language that's used intimates backwards.
28 minutes.
Couldn't it have said better than instead of saying don't believe until the day of your death, said never believe in yourself, even the last day of your death, the last day of your life.
So obviously, Chazal is telling us something.
Therefore, I'm asking the question:
All
what
right.
about the day of your death? Are you allowed different things that you're not allowed previously?
Correct.
Oh, that's what it's telling us.
So
What they
until
are.
the day of your death, you
Yeah.
are not to depend on your righteousness,
Correct.
on what you did throughout
Okay.
your life.
Clear
You
to
made
me.
your record. But on the day of your death,
Then
you're
what?
supposed to believe that God will somehow give you a good, you must have a munah in Hashem.
Yeah.
That He will
What if
give
it's
you.
not- you don't
You
suffer?
come until the last day of your life, you gotta be plugging away. Never how I can take it easy. But at this point, that the Rabbi Shalom will make it right, will somehow, even though in your own mind, until that time, you're not to be samach on your tzidkis, on your righteousness. You're never to be depending on your righteousness until the day you die. Yeah. You must die with hope. You cannot feel there is no hope. You're going to your Father in heaven. And going to your Father in heaven is not a bad thing.
I could say something. You be the judge.
Oh, excuse me. I hate the transgression. See how it goes?
3 years ago, I had such an illness. Aside from I have a permanent illness.
Instead of, in case you got complacent.
So on top of that, I had an illness
that you're not supposed to.
My blood condition is such that it's beyond normal count. Therefore, I had to undergo an operation. And when the blood is not normal, I had 1 million platelets. Normal is 100,000. I was 10 times the norm. And platelets are what clots the blood. With the danger that if you're under the knife, you're on the operating table and they're removing, the blood is flowing, it could clot and it's anywhere in the body. So I went for a whole hour, I was on a machine that was taking all my blood out, sending it through a sieve and putting it back in me, just like dialysis that kidney people have. That was on an hour. And right from that blood bank in Evanston Hospital, I was wheeled directly to the operating room. But they wouldn't take me in the operating room until they flushed out as many places as they could. I was 10 times normal. So, all right. Did I live? I wonder. But I want you to ask my wife, who saw me before I was wheeled into the operating room, and with her was her sister. And they were in a state of shock. And I was resigned, and I felt confident, and everything that was done for me was for the best. Now, what I'm trying to intimate, I considered there was about 20% of the cases of the illness that I have who have to undergo an operation. I knew this from years going by, that 20% don't recover an operation, the smallest operation. So I knew there was a possibility. But I was confident, whatever's meant to be will be, and I resigned myself and I accept whatever it is, and I was calm. I wasn't in trepidation, I wasn't nervous, and my witnesses were my wife and her sister. And they remarked to me at the time, they've never seen anybody go into an operation as relaxed and calm as I was. So felt at that time, I resigned myself. I've done all I can till now. I'm in the hands of God, and that's the way I went into the operation.
Well, you were ready. You were ready to go.
I was ready.
You mean your mind?
I was relaxed. Yeah. I knew I was in. No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. All right, you too. All right, you have what you underwent was also. But I had a complication that before an operation, Rabbi. I told you the operation was to remove a gallbladder. But while I was open, the doctor was smart enough to poke around and look what's doing. And what I had was an abscess on my liver. That if it was not removed, it would have killed me within a week. And this was why they had to treat me. I was in the hospital 10 days of treatment before they could bring me to the operation. That my system was so poisoned that I had complications.
Well, you're talking about it.
So yeah, I'm talking about it. But I realized they told me that not only the gallbladder wasn't the problem. This thing was more serious, and this created the whole trouble that I had. But it never showed up in X-rays. They
fixed it up.
They removed them.
Chazal is telling us a very great lesson. People make the assumption that a life is always the same. It isn't. Until the day of your death, it is the same. You're not supposed to be complacent.
Yeah.
But on the day of your death, then you have to be prepared.
Be confident.
You have to trust that there are many
Like tell any disobedient children.
Oh.
I'm saving it.
Hopefully the same.
Don't depend in the strength of your success and in the strength of your righteousness. The Ashri Adam Yifakat Tommy, because we have a general rule. Happy is the person that always has trepidation here, that perhaps, God forbid, something could go wrong. In anything, you always can never depend on your righteousness as long as you are still alive. The Shlomo, King Solomon, Nofel Mekiso, fell away from his throne with Sof Yomov at the end of his days because he had tended to become complacent. King Ben Pei Shonim, Kohen Gadol was the elder, the great Talmud scholar for 80 years. Now the Tzaduk became a Tzaduk. This is something that is not to be in the general rule. Now, we have a general rule. We've learned this before, this general rule. Now we're going to learn it here. Omru, we have a Gemara in Yuma, Lamed Ches Amud Beis. Actually, there's also a Tosfos in Bava Basra, says the same concept. Since we have a general rule, since the majority of a person's years goes by without sinning, Shuv Einu Choto, the possibilities he will no longer sin. Because it's, generally speaking, he will follow a pattern that's already been set up. Yeah, generally. Generality, even though it's a generality, you can't depend on it, even individually, even if you manage the majority of your life to have been on site.
Because the Satan and Yitzhak is still there.
Even if they make specific allegations that this type can depend on it. Therefore, Al Tifrosh Me'atzibor, separate from the Tzibor and all the troubles they have. In order they should be loving you, to stand by you when you have tzaras. Don't assume that always the tzaras will be by somebody else and never by you. People always have a simplistic point of view. Oh, that's a terrible thing that happened to them, but inside you say to yourself, oh, that's a terrible thing. It didn't happen to me. And then all of a sudden,
all these crime shows, they say you should never say a robbery could never happen to you because 1 out of 5 people
has the same problems, or they have the same concerns as the Jewish community.
It may very well be that he should be chosen for those qualifications, but unfortunately, in most cases, they don't use those as qualifications to choose. Yes.
Isn't it like, to be a prophet, you gotta have certain things? So when so if like you're tall and strong, they'll usually nominate you for a leader or something like that.
Yeah, there are certain qualifications mentioned there, but exceptions to these things, if it's for a temporary basis, if it's necessary. Hashem, and sometimes, I believe so.
Yes. Thursday morning?
When they bury him, Thursday. Then it would be Wednesday morning. I'll get up, obviously.
Good.
You must understand, the halacha is that you cannot go and or something, but it's better if you can have a minion at the home of the...
There's no information. You can't get an operator for information. To give you
a minion in the shul, that's right. Lamadal is referring to the passage that says, don't judge your chaver until you come to his place. The first Israel is talking about the leader of the community. And you are a leader of the Jewish community now, and you got to judge somebody that made a mistake, sin. So the Chemla, you must judge him with mercy. You're a leader of the Jewish community, you got to judge him with mercy. Oh, don't hold him in contempt. No, but you should have pain on his weaknesses, that he was not able to stand his test. Dying because you still have not come to that man's place, and you have not come to the point where you were in that lager, in that position, and you were able to stand by this temptation. Obviously, if you're in a position to help a fellow Jew, you should help him. But we're talking about if you are going to, say for instance, you're the judge, you got to see what punishment is to be. Don't punish him harshly. Don't be so self-righteous that you got to say, wow, we got to eliminate all these terrible things around here, as though if you were getting the same position, you would do better. Maybe not so good, but...
I just want to understand, this is not to judge you.
They're talking about if you're the leader of the...
Now, until you reach this place. Because
you never know. Nobody knows somebody else's position. You may think, but there may be some factor.
The Lord saying never judge it
You never can make a judgment on inadequate knowledge. And that's exactly what it is here, inadequate knowledge. You might think that some Jew is a good-for-nothing bum, and he might turn out to be the greatest tzaddik of that generation.
He could be the one.
And you didn't even know it. You didn't know it at all.
Yeah, always we should know.
Hey, it says, Al Tomar Dover Shiav Shel Shemo. It's talking again about the leader of the Jewish community. It says like this. The Chosol Lamani, it is a admonition to the leader of the Jewish community, Tzam to be very careful, Dadik, Ma'od, and very particular. Every word he's taking out money. In Kodam Roy Shioda.
Why he's spending money?
It's like you remember I gave you a motion that every time you say something improper it costs you $1,000. You want to say something, oh yeah, who can afford it? And once you understand who can afford it, so you keep your mouth shut. Whether or not it is Lashon Hara or not, the chances are it is. Dabru, if every person is fit to knows what he's going to speak, he doesn't have to speak what they know. In other words, he doesn't have to repeat things what's obvious to the call. He doesn't have to go and say these things. He could go and he could make mistakes. And sometimes he can cause a lot of damage to Jewish when he slips out a secret of the Jewish community, ears of unsympathetic ears, and they can cause a lot of damage to the Jewish community. See, as a leader of the Jewish community, he knows where all the skeletons are buried. And he gets in contact with other people that as necessary, goyim, wherever it is, and he thinks that they're friends, and he reveals to them things that he shouldn't reveal. Because they will misuse whatever is given to them.
That's the case what's happening now. Washington is talking about we're faced with a deficit and these words are heard in New York. When the city of Chicago wants to float a bond, they want the lowest cost of interest so that they could cost them less money. So when they hear all the problems we got, so the interest rate is going to go up. So by his saying things that he knows, the skeletons in the closet, and he's revealing them, the result is that it's going to cost, it's going to damage, being a leader, he's damaging his...
Zion. Lamed Zion is talking about, don't say, I will learn, next page, on Pevov. Pevov, Almav. Read the line. This is also a warning, the manhig, to the leader, you never really realize how much work there is to be done until you're president of a shul. You got to do so many things you wouldn't believe. Applies to each individual person. Atokov that's engaged in many activities of his daily activities that he's bothered. If it should happen, he has a little spare time in the middle of his activities. Lo Yomar, he shouldn't think to himself, what can I learn in this small little time? About learning. Elo, but he should. When he has, he thinks to himself, when I have a lot of time from my activity, then I will sit and learn the way you're supposed to learn. You never have a lot of time. Well, Rabbi Shah and the Shavadato, you can gather them all together, because you have been lazy, your learning will never come to you. Lose all these opportunities. Whereas, on the other hand, if you grasp all, you'll be amazed how much more you can acquire by just putting in that little time that comes available. Time, yes.
It says
a person should never assume that he's going to get a period of time when he's going to sit down and learn as much as necessary in order to make real progression. You should say it adds up. You shouldn't say, what can I learn this small time? But when will I learn? When I have a lot of time.
so.
No, listen, if I keep doing this, I'll find you more.
We can start the next Mishnah. Goyo Amir, he said, Ein Gor Yerechid. That's empty. Any standards, any good standards whatsoever. Not only he doesn't know much Torah, not only doesn't he have good manners, but he's empty from any good standards whatsoever. This person cannot truly become a fearing of sinning because he doesn't know how to avoid it. He makes mistakes. Then, what about if a person is an amoritz, an ignorant Jew? That doesn't mean necessarily that he can't avoid sinning in business activity, even if he doesn't not knowledgeable. But there is something wrong with amoritz is a better, higher degradation of a boor, a person who's lacking everything. Has competence in the business world. Let's go within the spirit of the law. And then sometimes by the book it's harder than really has to be. And this is a problem that we have when we eat that. And you, if you are conscientious, you want to do everything right. But unfortunately, many of these areas are very strict. And you really don't know how to do it in a proper way. And then if there's a leniency is required at a certain point, you may not be apply that leniency. Or if you want to do something within the spirit of the law, again, you're not knowledgeable. So therefore, it's not a crime to be ignorant, but it certainly is not a preferable state to be in. You should try to remove that ignorance further. A person that's ashamed to ask a question, you always remain ignorant of basic concepts. People a lot of times feel, well, how can I expose myself when people will say that I am so stupid? I have to ask such a simple, elementary question. Now, I can tell you from my own personal experience, perhaps it's not fair to use you as a group, but you've never asked a stupid question all the time. So and what is so terrible if you ask a stupid question? Maybe the stupid question is very smart.
I don't know. There are people that ask questions. Their mind is so blocked up that they can't absorb the answer. They ask a kasha, but they're not willing to be neutral to hear the answer and ponder it and think about it. And they're already saying, and it falls like on deaf ears, and they're ready to argue their point again.
The first thing that a person must do when you come to learn is to have, you're not permitted to say that you know what the emes is. Because if you know what the emes is, you won't be proud to answer the question. You must at least understand that perhaps once you're in doubt, then you should have enough patience to listen and try to absorb the answer.
See if it answers
your doubts.
Proper.
But if
don't have that
if you come with the concept that you're right, but you'll ask a question anyway, whatever, you're not seeking the truth. It may appear that you're doing it, but all you're trying to do is bait the person that is doing it. You're not really seeking the truth, which is a ridiculous way of learning. What are you gaining? What is one gaining if they're just baiting the person and not seeking the truth? This is one of the failings of a person that thinks he knows. He closes his mind to knowledge, missing out any knowledge that could come your way. Once you get to the point where you think that you are so knowledgeable that you cannot permit any further knowledge to come your way, you are in effect stopping the knowledge. Let me just finish this. And every time in our entire lives, we don't have time to sit down and learn on a serious basis. And as a result, our rationalization is boxing ourselves.
You're wasting time. What you should be worried about. So you shouldn't worry. Well, I gotta do this and do this so I can.
Before we came here, your brother asked me a shayla. So for a person to assume that by his individual activity he's going to get,
you give up God the opportunity to give you the million.
Yeah.
And this one in Chicago that won, they bought 152 tickets. This I don't agree with. They'll win with the one ticket. So that's my belief.
You've got to
All right, that's why I say $1, it's all right, but not
No,
more.
but that's like testing guys.
Well, maybe that is the situation.
well,
but-
there are no men, each you should strive to be a man. We will learn. Now, what's your shayla? Repeat it. Here, and we said there that if a person doesn't have any damage coming to him, both on going and coming, zero. Remember the Gemara says he was thinking about considered a fixed danger. So I gave her a little hesber when we were talking about it. I gave her this ra. I want to repeat it now. This ra is only a fixed danger when there is a vacuum. That is, When a person is not engaged in Torah, is a fixed danger at that point. When he is not a fixed danger,
Correct.
it's no longer a fixed danger. It is, in effect, a danger that only happens occasionally. If a person that his main thrust is to do mitzvahs and to learn the Torah, generally speaking, he has control over his Yetzer, and it's only exceptionally that it occurs that the Yetzer does have an effect. So that would not be considered a fixed danger unless it would be a situation where the person was not engaged in learning Torah. Is taki a fixed danger. And Zika Matsui, it happens quite frequently that the Yetzer persuades a person to do things that are contrary to his best interest. So I told you, I explained to you when it is or when it isn't. Obviously, we must assume to the degree that a person has the vagus that clings, to that degree he is protected. And so therefore, to the degree that he does do it, for instance, we have, perhaps there was another instance where there was a great tzaddik that was put in together with Rishon at the same time, burnt, and he was not, but his clothes, he wasn't burnt, but a juxtaposition of Rishis and Tzidkis, there is a lack, there's a certain degree of lack of protection that doesn't deserve to be protected. It depends on the situation, obviously. It depends on the circumstances. That only if you have a track record of metal, I would consider that.
Which means that the shaft was all metal too.
Many years ago, about 20, 25 years ago, I was in Torah's chair many years there, and he bought the seat, and somehow nobody ever saw me. And after that time, every month it was done, almost every week. There in the middle of Mishnah Avos. That's page 170. Where are you looking?
I'm looking for 170. I don't know what.
Wait, you have more right near the end.
Okay. What's this? Until we get started, it takes. I got bigger print here. It's running now already. We're running
You have it,
170. Yeah. Good. Okay.
Hello, Mayor.
2.5 minutes went. Wasted.
Hillel says, Al min hatzibur, do not separate yourself from the Jewish community. Al tamim ba'atzmecho, al yom muscho, and don't believe in yourself until the day of your death. Al todim es chavagil makomo, and don't judge your fellow Jew until you come to his place. Al she'ef sh'lishmoa, and don't say a thing that's impossible to understand. She'sof lishmoa, that you hope that eventually it will be understood. Al tomar l'she'efna, and don't say when I will have time, I will be free from my activities, I will learn Shem Eloi Tiponim. Maybe you'll never have freedom from so that you can learn. Now let's look at Bartanura, the inner column. It says, Al tiprosh min hatzibur, do not go and separate from the Jewish community. Al hishtatef b'tzarasom, you should join yourself together with their troubles. Shechoa porosh min hatzibur, anybody that separates himself from the Jewish community, Enurav and Nechemes Atzibur, will not see the comforting of the Tzibur. In other words, he won't see the good times that will come in the Jewish community. It's more in Tanis Yud Aleph Amud. Al Tomar v'atzmecho, don't say about yourself, Al Tamon v'atzmecho, don't believe in yourself. Al Yom Moslecho, until your day of your death. In other words, don't assume that you're such a big time tzaddik that you don't have to go and prepare or work hard to do the Rotzanah. Like more in Brochus Chavtes Amud Aleph, Shemesh Kohitrono, he was the Kohen Gadol for 80 years, and each time he'd go into Kodesh Kadoshim and come out alive, which means that God considered him a complete righteous type. B'sof Nasi Tzduki, and at the end of his years, he became a free thinker, like a reformer.